We're here to idea everyone, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into new scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode I'll be exploring new research which has found that bees follow linear landmarks to find their way home. Guided by the light, sweet sentinels fall into line, senses full of smell and sun and sky. Exploratory flights with wings aflutter to trace loops of black and gold against the fading sights of strange terrain. Driven by memory, these dancing drones traverse the hive highway of channels, fields and streams. Linear landscapes that always seem to point to home. This poem is inspired by recent research published in Frontiers in Behavioural Neuroscience, which has found that honeybees search for linear landscape elements that match mental maps of home's areas. For many years, scientists have studied honeybees and found that they are very skilled navigators. They use many different ways to find their way around, including their sense of smell, the sun, patterns in the sky's light, tall objects that they can see from far away, and even possibly the Earth's magnetic field. They're also really smart and have excellent memories, which helps them learn and figure out new things. Similarly, in the past, pilots used to fly planes without modern technology like GPS or radio beacons. Instead, they would look for roads and train tracks to follow, which helped them stay on course and find their way to their destination. In this new study, scientists discovered that honeybees navigate their way back home by using straight lines on the ground, just like how pilots used to do it. The researchers caught 50 honeybees who were experienced in finding food and put a small device on their back that they could track. They then released the bees in a new area they had never been to before. The only thing the bees could use to help them find their way home were two parallel irrigation channels that ran in a certain direction. Normally, when bees are in a new area, they fly around in circles to explore the area and find their way. But the researchers were able to use the small devices on the bees to track their exact flight patterns for up to 3 hours. The results showed that the bees were using the irrigation channels as a way to find their way home. This study tells us that honeybees are very smart and can use multiple things in their environment to help them navigate. It also shows us that they have a good memory and can remember important landmarks to help them find their way home. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. Guided by the light, sweet sentinels fall into line, senses full of smell and sun and sky. Exploratory flights with wings aflutter to trace loops of black and gold against the fading sights of strange terrain. Driven by memory, these dancing drones traverse the hive highway of channels, fields and streams, linear landscapes that always seem to point to home. In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Bees, So Many Bees by Anna Jackson. Anna Jackson is a New Zealand poet and academic who was born in Auckland in 1967. She has an MA from the University of Auckland and a DPhil from Oxford University. Jackson has published several collections of poetry, including The Pastoral Kitchen, published in 2001, Pasture and Flock, published in 2018. Jackson also authors and co-edits numerous works of literary criticism, guest edits New Zealand magazines, and contributes everything from essays on children's literature and poetics to short fiction and book reviews for journals and anthologies in New Zealand and overseas. She is currently an associate professor in the School of English, Film, Theatre and Media Studies at Victoria University in Wellington. Bees, So Many Bees by Anna Jackson. After 20 years of marriage, we walked out of the bush and onto a rough dirt road. We followed till we saw a pond we might be able to get to. The ground was boggy and buzzing. The pond was thick with weed and slime. It was not the sort of pond anyone would swim in, but we did, picking and sliding into the water over the bog, and bees we suddenly noticed were everywhere, were settling on our hair as we swam, ducks turning surprised eyes our way. After 20 years of marriage, what is surprising isn't really so much the person you are with, but to find yourself so out of place in this scene, cold but not able to get out without stepping over bees. So many bees. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the ideaXme Show. ideaXme is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideaXme.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.